for us.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I'm really pleased to talk on this bill, the bill that amends the Higher Education Support Act of 2003. But I also am looking forward to, and I'm hoping at some point, that we see equal respect and value placed on those who have incredible skills, both through university education, but those in the vocational sector as well, who also have extraordinary talents and skills. And I think we need to get to a point where we place equal respect on those achievements and those skills. This bill is going to implement two of the priority areas from and actions from the Australian Universities Accord Interim report. And the objective of the Accord is to provide recommendations and performance targets that improve the quality, accessibility, affordability and sustainability of higher ed. And it is equally as important that our universities are graduating students who are actually job ready and able to add value to whatever business, industry or sector they're actually entering. And in my opinion, the ultimate arbiter of the success of our entire education and training system is the person who's employing them, the employer. Yep. Is this person capable of and up to the job I'm paying them to do in my business or sector? But I want to focus in my speech today on one of the recommendations of the Accord and raise my concerns. The first recommendation is to extend visible local access to tertiary education by creating further regional university centres. Now, this is a very good measure. The government also announced an additional 34 regional study hubs. However, 14 of these will be located in suburban and metro areas. So that is the change that really concerns me, Deputy Speaker. Every one of these takes away another opportunity for young people living in regional and remote parts of Australia. The regional study centres were an initiative of the Coalition while we were in government, and it's an initiative that I'm very proud of. It's been a very effective way of enabling aspiring students from regional and remote parts of Australia to be able to access higher education and be supported in their communities to do so, while they're actually studying by distance with any Australian tertiary provider. It was and is an innovative model. And there is no doubt that these centres make a real and practical difference to our students and their families. These are the young people. We actually need them. We need them. They live hours and hours from tertiary institutions that are in many instances hundreds and hundreds of kilometres away from their homes. They're the ones who can't get on buses and trains to have access to a tertiary education. They simply live too far away. And this is the gap that the regional university centres were specifically designed to fill. And these great young people no longer have to leave their families, their friends or their local communities to pursue their higher education. They can actually stay at home while they're studying. At the same time, their skills can be available to and boost their local communities and economies, sometimes really small local communities and economies. The centre provides them with study spaces, video conferencing, computer facilities and internet access, as well as administrative, academic and wellbeing support for those studying in that method. And at any Australian university or vocational education and training provider. So that's a fantastic practical option and one that clearly works that I'm very proud of. And we know that people in regional Australia are less than half as likely to complete a university degree compared with people who live in cities. And our regional university centres are actually helping communities right across Australia to help reverse this trend. And this was part of our determination and focus while in government, that all Australians, no matter where they live, particularly those in regional and remote areas, deserve access to high-quality education. And these centres and the facilities that support them need access to their tertiary education. So these young people can live at home, get the care and support they need from their families while they study. And these issues are critical for regional and remote students, which is why I want to make sure that the new hubs are in areas that will benefit regional and remote students the most, which means study centres located in their own community where they can pursue those study dreams, those students. And can I acknowledge all of my coalition colleagues who've worked with me constantly over the years to improve access to higher education for these wonderful young people who live in our regional, rural and remote electorates. We've been relentless on their behalf in the parliament and will continue to do so whether we're in opposition or in government. This has been and still is an absolute passion and priority for us. We are committed to our young people being able to pursue their higher education or their training, their work dreams and ambitions. In my very first campaign, this was a priority issue raised with me by families right across the southwest of WA. But when I came into this place, I found that successive Labor governments failed to understand the lack of access and the disparity between rural, regional and remote students compared to those in metro and suburban areas. In fact, the Rudd government excluded young people who lived in areas defined by the ASGS classifications as inner regional areas from accessing independent youth allowance, which is the financial help from Centrelink that they so badly needed to help with the accommodation costs and the higher costs from living away from home. Now, that actual decision excluded countless young people from my electorate and those of my colleagues who live well and truly more than an hour and a half from Perth-based universities. Those young people who had no choice but to move to Perth to be able to do the courses they needed to do in their education and career ambitions. And I'll never, ever forget the conversation with one really distressed mum in a Busselton supermarket who at that time had to decide which one of her children she could afford to send to university at that time. Only one could she afford to send, and she was so hurt at having to choose one of her children to do so. What hurt even more, I found when I visited the schools at the time, were those great young people who were self-selecting alternative courses at high school because they knew their families simply could not afford the cost of their university education while they had to live away from the family home. And these are the critical young people we need to keep in our regional and remote communities, to keep them thriving. It's their new young ideas and their energy and what they'll bring that we need. It's also the equity of access for them, Deputy Speaker. Besides the significant changes we made to the conditions around accessing independent youth allowance for regional and remote students, one of the things we did in government was to initiate the independent review by Emeritus Professor Dr John Halsey. We accepted as a government all 11 of those recommendations, and that saw the first cohort of the 16 regional university centres located in all states and the Northern Territory announced in the same year, with a further 8 added in 2022. The National Regional, Rural and Remote Tertiary Education Strategy built on the Halsey Report initiatives. And I am pleased, Deputy Speaker, that the current Australian University Accord has prioritised more regional university centres, but as I said, I'm particularly concerned that the focus has shifted to extending these into suburban and metro areas. The RUCs, as they're known as, have been very, very successful in those regional and remote areas. You only have to look at where they're located on the maps to know why they're so important and how so many more students in similar centres desperately need these centres. The Accord itself notes that RUCs have been effective at improving student participation, retention and completion rates in regional and remote areas. And I believe that should be the continuing focus because that need is still there. There is no doubt that the regional and remote areas are the ones most in need of a regional university centre. But the actual centre needs an enduring community framework around it for it to be able to be sustainable. We've seen them often supported and prioritised by their Regional Development Australia Committee and local governments established in places like Geraldton and Taree in Mount Isa, the Pilbara, the Bass Coast and Albany in Western Australia, for instance. All locations where young people would have had to move away from home just to go to university. They can't take buses or trains to get there. They live hundreds, and if not hundreds of kilometres away from these universities. And there is that additional cost involved in sending and supporting young people at university. The rent and accommodation alone at the moment is just a massive cost. And it's hundreds of dollars a week. And of course these young people have to work and study as well. And they have to be able to cope with life away from their home. I was talking to a recent family in Margaret River with 2 sons. The father is actually having to leave his job and move to Perth to be able to fund his son's access to university. And this is a repeat story if you live in regional and rural areas. And there is no doubt at all that the regional country kids simply don't have the same opportunities as students in cities, suburban or metro areas. For those of us who live and work in regional and the remote areas, we know exactly what the challenges are, both for the young people and their families in trying to access higher education. And there is a real need and commitment from the community to support the establishment and ongoing presence of a regional university centre. This cannot be underestimated. And I saw this in practice at the Albany Centre, and there was a whole wraparound of supports there and a community commitment to that centre, because they actually understood, as it did the local Regional Development Australia Committee, how important this opportunity was for their young people. So some of the issues that need to be considered is, does this RUC align with the community's needs and aspirations? Is there physical capital in the community to do so? They are really important to the sustainability of any of these. Other factors include no existing local campus for them to go to, and the distances from other campuses as well. So, as I said, there is a real need for the community to engage, to support and extend these regional university centres. And I've met some fabulous young people who've attended these, and they are just extraordinarily empowered and have had the best experience and now have opportunities as a result. Edith Cowan University in my part of the world in Bunbury has itself opened several regional learning hubs around the southwest and one in the Peel region. They're actually in the process of refurbishing their Busselton Learning Centre, which will open soon. But I think there's no doubt that flexible learning options are what is needed both now and ahead. And the review itself, the Accord review, states that a higher quality and equitable higher education system is now essential. Well, it is, but it is certainly that for kids and young people who live in regional and remote parts of Australia. And as I said early in my speech, Deputy Speaker, given the great young people I get to work with and the value they add to our regional communities, I hope we get to a point in this country where, through any of the education and training pathways, that we actually get to a point where there's the same amount of value and respect for a person who's come through the vocational education process and adds significantly to their area of expertise. Some of these people are absolutely brilliant. If you want a problem solved and you want something fixed, they're the people who will do it. And many of the jobs ahead will be in that space. So equal, I'd say a far more equal respect and value placed on those talented young people with skills who come through the vocational sector, as well as those that do university study training, and that all of them are able to add the skills that we need to take Australia forward. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.